Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and today is a really exciting day because one of my most anticipated LEGO themes launching for the first time this year has unveiled the first wave of sets, and that is, of course, LEGO One Piece. In this video, we'll take a look at every single one of the minifigure-based One Piece sets, from the massive Going Merry ship, the gigantic Baratie, to even some of the smaller sets like the origins of Monkey D. Luffy and everything in between. I am super excited for this wave. There's a lot of good stuff to check out here, so let's dive into my analysis of the brand new LEGO One Piece wave right now. Here's a look at all of the LEGO One Piece minifigure base sets together. From smallest to largest, we have the Windmill Village Hut depicting Luffy's origins for $30, Buggy the Clown's circus tent depicting their first encounter against one of the major villains of the series for $55, the battle at Arlong Park jumping forward to the finale of One Piece live action season 1 for $80, and of course, the two largest sets of the wave, the first one being the Going Merry pirate ship for $140 and the Baratie floating restaurant for $330. That is also the only 18 plus or adult oriented set of the entire wave, which I think is pretty cool. There's a couple of other LEGO One Piece items being released. There's a Gum Gum Fruit make and take given away at certain LEGO stores. There's a Brickheads of Monkey D. Luffy and Buggy the Clown coming out, as well as an exclusive pop badge for San Diego Comic-Con, but for all things considered, this is the entirety of the LEGO One Piece minifigure based offerings, and it's a really interesting wave. Honestly, I really love this particular wave because it feels to me like even somebody who knows nothing about One Piece, you don't need to be a fan of the anime or the show or the live action, you can jump in and enjoy these sets for what they are. They almost feel like what LEGO would do today if they were to make a modern Pirates wave. You've got a big pirate ship, a much larger, massive floating restaurant, kind of a smaller docks area, and so much more. And I just love the creativity and diversity that this wave brings to the LEGO portfolio, while still obviously depicting very clear scenes from the One Piece live action series. LEGO has been drifting closer and closer to depicting anime in LEGO sets, and while we technically still haven't gotten really any LEGO sets based directly off of anime. Exo Force was kind of LEGO's own take on anime. Of course, we got Speed Racer, but that was based off the live action movie. Avatar: The Last Airbender for the cartoon sets, that was based off an American show, so it's not really anime in my book. And of course, this is based off the live action, not the anime. It still is a lot closer to a direct adaptation of an anime-based LEGO theme, and that's something that's super exciting. So let's dive in to all the sets, starting with the smallest to the largest. This right here is our introduction to the One Piece theme. 75636 is the Windmill Village Hut. It retails for $30 US or 30 euros and comes with 299 pieces, which is honestly pretty perfect value. I don't really have anything to complain about with the price of this set, which is a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one, especially given the pretty high prices of a lot of other licensed LEGO sets this year alone. It's a really interesting topic for a LEGO set, and honestly not one that I really expected LEGO to cover, given that it basically is, at least in the anime and the live action, not in the manga, but at least in those two mediums, a flashback scene depicting the origins of Monkey D. Luffy, and LEGO typically doesn't tend to cover those. It is really cool to get a minifigure of Shanks, which, spoiler alert, will become a lot more useful and relevant throughout future seasons of One Piece, but as it is right now, it's just a nice way to depict this very early scene where there's basically no conflict and it's really just a chill place for Monkey D. Luffy to hang out. On one side of the board here, you have your notices area, which I think is really cool, which hints towards the collectability gimmick of all of the sets, including wanted posters, which are randomized throughout the sets. Mine came with an Alvida wanted poster, which obviously was random, but I actually think that's pretty pertinent because that was basically the first villain we see Luffy fight in the live action show. The roof is removable, and you can go ahead and take a look at the inside of Party's bar here. It's really interesting to see a bar depicted in LEGO form because typically LEGO tends to stray away from like depicting alcohol and stuff like that, but I think it is a really nice build. I like it for what it is, and while it is fairly simple, this does feel the most like what an original LEGO pirate set could be like. There's some pretty clever studs on the side techniques to tie everything together and add some detail, and I really love the use of the surfboard here for the menu, which I just think is a really clever design. This is the kind of build that you can repurpose to a lot of different things. You can have it be some sort of a beachside resort, use it for your own LEGO pirate stuff, or of course use it in the context of One Piece. And that's one of my favorite things about these sets, is just how ubiquitous a lot of these items feel. You have a very basic palm tree on the side, and it does make me kind of wish the days of getting those large molded palm trees that we used to get for LEGO that you could pose around, but it's alright for a smaller set like this, and of course, it does include a dock in which you can have the boat dock in if you wish to actually showcase this with a chain connecting the boat to the dock itself. The set does include a couple of different interesting minifigure components, which we'll take a look at when we take a look at the figures, but one other really cool thing about the side of this set is it basically doubles as a display board for all of the wanted posters you pick up throughout your journeys. This set only includes one of the randomized wanted posters, but I actually went around all my different sets and decided to showcase what all the posters would look like fully attached, and it's actually really cool. They do have the perfect amount of slots. There are 8 posters to collect throughout the line, and unfortunately, since these are randomized, you never really know what you're going to get, and despite receiving a copy of every single one of the new One Piece sets, I unfortunately never actually got a Buggy wanted tile, which is very sad because my collection is incomplete and I'm probably going to have to get that one online or trade it with a friend. But otherwise, you can see a quick look at all the wanted posters here, and I figured it made sense to actually showcase all these wanted posters in this particular review because this is a set that is literally made to display all of them, and that's something I really appreciate, how much extra effort they put into allowing you to display these wanted posters. But with that, we can move on to the minifigures, and we're going to start off with the most interesting minifig to me, which is Shanks. Shanks features a brand new dual molded hat and hair combination piece, showcasing the iconic straw hat and his dark red hair underneath. He has a black fabric cape, which is quite nice. No printing on the legs, but I really don't think he needed it. And he also does come with an alternate hairpiece because, of course, he gives the hat to Luffy, and that's something I really do appreciate. There are a couple of different expressions, which we'll take a look at in a second once we remove the cape here, where you can see he has kind of a more serene, smiling expression, and then an angry expression on the back. And I really do appreciate just how much variability they gave to this figure. It's a fairly simple design with just kind of a white tunic, but I like how they did include an extra hairpiece as well, which is actually an Asian or BTS style of hairpiece recolored in dark red, which is a really nice color to get, and one that I think is just going to be useful going forwards. For me, I think my favorite thing is just the attention to detail in these figures. They literally made 2 different hat pieces, one with hair and one without hair that can be held by a minifigure to symbolize characters giving the hat to other people. Like Shanks giving the hat to Luffy, and then Luffy later on giving the hat to Nami in the later finale of the series. Moving on from that, we have another character here, and that is Makino, who also really only appears in these flashback segments of the story. She is the bartender from Luffy's hometown of Fuchsia Village, the owner of Party's Bar, and it is a pretty obscure character to get in minifigure form, but kind of the perfect one to include in this set. We have a brand new headpiece printed on kind of this specialized newest type of skin tone, a dark green hairpiece, and a nice new print for the torso as well, which is pretty sweet, and I'm really happy to get that one. The star of the show, of course, is the young version of Monkey D. Luffy, and Luffy has the Gum Gum fruit, which is actually not a new mold. Those are just 2 eggshell pieces which are combined facing each other, which I think is a very clever way to depict the Gum Gum fruit, and of course an exclusive torso and headpiece to be used for this younger version of the character. LEGO really went all out when depicting the characters of the series, and I really appreciate that. Of course, he does have the hat which he can hold in his hands, and they chose not to include the version of his hair with the hat, which I think is fine because we get that in pretty much all the other sets. The alternate expression is of him crying, which is the perfect expression to have because it really just depicts the character in that scene, and of course, they did make a brand new hairpiece for Luffy for this entire theme. So all in all, I think it's a pretty decently designed figure, and now we can take a look at my final thoughts about the set as a whole. I think this serves as a really good introduction to the One Piece theme. The price is pretty much just right, especially for 3 exclusive minifigures coming in a $30 set, and it really just depicts a nice little dockside area for you to party at, and of course set sail on the rowboat. Honestly, I don't really have that much else to say about this one. It's a nice little charming look at Luffy's early life, and I love that they depicted this as a set, especially because some of the other sets are more conflict focused. It's important to have a set that really is just kind of a chill slice of life style of build, and I love it. It helps flesh out the world. It's a really cool additional set to get for the theme, and now we can move on to the next set. This right here is set number 75637, Buggy the Clown's Circus Tent. It comes with 573 pieces and retails for $55 or 50 euros, which on paper actually seems like pretty good value, but to be completely honest, this does not really feel like a $55 set to me. And I think a part of that is because I guess a lot of the pieces are used in smaller detail-oriented elements versus actually adding to a larger size of build, but as it is right now, it definitely feels like one of the weaker One Piece sets to me, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because this is a really fantastic wave, so even some of the weaker sets are still a lot of fun to play with. The entire point of this set is it provides you with exactly 1/4 of a circus tent, so if you buy 3 more copies of the set, you can choose to build the entire circular tent. I honestly think that is okay for the concept of the set itself. I've seen a lot of folks online say that they kind of feel annoyed that you have to buy 4 copies of this to have the fully circular tent, and while I do understand where that's coming from, I also don't think it was very realistic to expect LEGO to put out a fully circular tent for a scene like this, which really doesn't need that big of a set, so I feel like this was a pretty good compromise. What you do have in the set is pretty fun. You have 4 minifigures, of course Luffy, Zoro, and Nami, as well as the titular Buggy the Clown, who does come in 2 different forms in the set itself, and you do have a number of different accessories to go alongside it. You have the spinning target board, the water cage in which he imprisons Luffy, a couple of seats for spectators. No spectators are included in the set, but they do have seats for them, a cage to hold Nami in, and of course the exterior of the tent as well, which showcases the stickered sign saying Buggy Pirates, and then 2 of the exclusive collectibles of the wave, which are randomized wanted posters. I do understand the collectability reason to have these be randomized, but I do kind of wish they did correspond a little better to what was in the set. Like, imagine if we guaranteed were to get at least 1 Buggy poster in the Buggy set, an Arlong poster in the Arlong set, and so on and so forth. Because as of right now, I still don't have a Buggy poster despite having the entire wave. Now, taking a look at the exterior of the build, I actually do like a lot of these studs on the side detailing here. Something I appreciate about the build is the usage of pretty clever studs on the side techniques to disguise what on the outside seems like a simple build. If you look at the center build for the kind of middle column of the tent there, it's using some pretty clever studs on the side techniques, and the same goes for the part around the outside of the tent. The side builds are fun, but honestly they don't have that much going on. You have this spinning dartboard where you can string up Zoro and kind of throw knives at him, kind of just like in the show, so it's a super simple build. There's not much you can do with it, and of course it spins a lot better when you don't have a minifigure attached, but I think it's okay for what it is, and it does make sense to include as a prop for this part of the show, especially because this was a pretty crucial part of the scene. The other side build is the water cage for Monkey D. Luffy, and it is a very simplistic cage. I really don't have that much to say about this one. It has a super simple function where you can kind of bust him out. There are some piping details on one side with a lever, as well as some stickers on the front to showcase the water bubbles, which I don't really know. It doesn't look that convincing to me, but I guess it's okay for what it is. The point of what you're supposed to do here is you kind of have Monkey D. Luffy balance on this sort of platform element, which you can use to cause him to launch out of the cage itself, or you can just kind of sink him a little bit deeper into the water cage, and that way he's kind of fully submerged. He doesn't have his hat in this scene, so you have to remove the hat to actually fit him inside the cage, but I think that's okay for what it is, and of course the idea is that you can play and use a minifigure to smash the cage open, and then he can bust out and attack Luffy. Moving on to the interior of the tent here, with all the minifigs removed, you have a bit of a throne for Buggy the Clown, as well as a studs on the side lights display, a gigantic head of Buggy the Clown himself, and a hanging cage, which is actually pretty clever in the way it's done because the cage is hanging on one of the bars that you would use to connect multiple copies of the set together. So that's actually pretty cool. Here's what Nami looks like inside of the cage. She does not look very happy about that, but it does fully fit a minifigure seated, and this type of cage design we've seen in a million other LEGO sets. I kind of want to say it first appeared in Fantasy Era Castle in 2007, but it could have even appeared earlier than that, and I don't remember. So it's a very common cage design. Now, all around the set there are a couple of barrels and boxes, as well as a brand new mold for a fruit here, which is really nice. It is cool to get a brand new molded fruit for the One Piece theme, especially given the importance of devil fruits in the storyline. Unfortunately, this doesn't really represent any one of the devil fruits, certainly not the Barabara no Mi fruit that Buggy the Clown consumes in the anime, which is red in color, but it is a really nice new fruit piece that kind of looks a bit like a pear. I would imagine that's what this is supposed to represent, and it definitely fits the the stylistic design of other large-scale LEGO fruits. But the more important question is, what's in the boxes? So if you've seen the scene in the live-action show, you know that one of the ways that the heroes are able to defeat Buggy is by separating out all of his different body parts and basically having them confined inside these chained boxes. And he spends the rest of the series pretty much just being a severed head, which is quite funny. Well, you have this really kind of chibi, funny-looking miniature version of Buggy, which we do see briefly in the show itself, where you have kind of his large hands, a super small torso, just a little bit of a nub for legs, and of course, he's lost his hat and he just has his kind of standard bandana. And I think that is a really funny look. The alternate expression for Buggy was absolutely perfect in displaying this figure, and I really like it for what it is. I actually think that this is a really nice extra thing to get. What wasn't so fun though was putting the sticker on the kind of 1x1 brick there. It certainly was not easy to do, and it was a little bit annoying just having to line up that sticker perfectly centered. So I kind of wish that piece was printed because it is for a minifigure style of figure, but other than that, it is a really clever way to depict that character. Moving onwards to the main build, you do have these separate seats which you can use to either stick to each other or just attach here. With these seats removed, you can clearly see how this is supposed to connect up to another copy of the set. There's an axle on one end of the set and an axle receiver on the other, and of course multiple copies of the set would allow you to also connect up all of these chairs. It would have been cool for $55 to have maybe just one more minifigure of a spectator, kind of one of the trapped villagers, but honestly, that wasn't super important to include, so it's not that big of a deal. But with that, we can now take a look at the minifigures included in the set, starting off with, of course, Buggy the Clown. Buggy here is one of the most detailed new minifigures of the One Piece wave, and I absolutely love the way he's depicted. He's sporting a brand new and very specialized dual-molded rubberized and plastic hair and hat combo mold, where the blue hair is slightly rubbery and movable, and the hat itself is orange plastic. Of course, he has a brand new face, torso, and leg print, which makes him one of the most decked out minifigures of the entire set, and it's remarkably accurate to the show itself. He's super specialized, and I definitely don't expect any of the parts of this minifigure to really ever be used again, but that's kind of what makes this character so special. And of course, they did manage to include an alternate version of Buggy the Clown, because obviously while LEGO isn't going to tell you to rip the hands and arms and legs off a LEGO minifigure, they did try to depict it in a slightly different brick-built form, which I really appreciate. Luffy here is technically an exclusive variant, because while he does use kind of the same pieces as his other versions, he has a neck bracket which allows him to attach his hat on his back this time, which is a really nice touch. The detail for Luffy himself is phenomenal. I love the dual molded legs, they're absolutely perfect for the character, and I think for this particular set, including him with the hair and not the hair hat combo is perfect. You still do have the hat, which he can use as an accessory, but of course when he's trapped in the water cage, he doesn't actually have access to the hat. It's kind of a separate aside piece, so it really does make sense that you just see him with his hair this time. Nami, on the other hand, is identical to some of the other versions of the figure that appear throughout the wave, and I think she's also really nicely done. She has a brand new orange hairpiece, dual molded white and tan arms, and good printing on the legs, although obviously if you look at what she looks like in the show, it would have been really nice to get dual molded legs for her as well to showcase the skirt/shorts she's wearing, and then of course just have these shoes printed on. She has two different expressions, with the eyebrows showcasing the orange hair, an angry one and a happy one, and I feel like that hairpiece is just so perfect for the character. I'm a fan, and now we can move on to Zoro. Zoro is sporting a specialized new molded sword element, which is super cool that he can actually hold in his mouth, which is very iconic. I was wondering how LEGO was going to pull it off, and well, this kind of makes a lot of sense. He has a brand new torso with dual molded dark blue and kind of this more nougaty skin tone color of arms, which I really appreciate. It's always good to get new minifigures with this skin tone, and you have the option to either place a black bandana on his head or his green hair, which is a really cool way to provide different options to depicting the same figure in the set, and a neat way to actually just show how much care LEGO put into depicting the figures. The other side of its face is a gritted teeth angry expression, and you can kind of imagine that's what his mouth looks like when he's holding the sword in between his teeth. I think that's totally perfect, where he literally has a facial expression for that. The legs are plain black, but honestly that doesn't bother me that much. If you look at his design in the show, there's really not that much detail they could have given it anyway, so I feel like this is a perfect minifigure depiction of a character in live action, and I absolutely love the design here. The new sword mold is also really cool. You can have him hold it as a clip on the hands, which also totally works, but obviously you can't really rotate it to be facing the right way, and it does have the very obvious neck bracket on it, which you kind of just slide in and out. Thankfully, you do not have to remove the head to slide this in and out. It really just snaps on and off, which is a very nice touch. But with that, we can move on to my final thoughts on this set, and to be completely honest, I feel like this is the weakest One Piece set, as I said at the beginning of the review, not even necessarily because it's a bad set, but I feel like it just doesn't really give you enough for $55. I was very negative on the set when it first was revealed, and having it in hand, I do like it a little bit more, and I feel like that gimmick of being able to combine multiple versions of it is going to be a really fun one to use, but altogether, I just feel like the other sets offer so much more when it comes to playability and value for your money than this coming at $55. Again, on paper, that's a pretty good price, but price for piece isn't everything, and once I have this in hand, I definitely am left feeling that I wish that there was something a bit more to add some extra oomph to this set. That's all I have to say about this one, so let's move on to the next set. This right here is 75638 Battle at Arlong Park. It retails for $80 or 80 euros and comes with 926 pieces and depicts the grand finale of season 1 of the live action show. This is actually a really cleverly built set, and it's hiding a pretty big play feature and secret that I really want to highlight on video because it is one of the coolest play features ever. Spoiler alert, it's an explosive one. The set depicts the park where Arlong and his gang hang out, which of course features a shooting gallery, a shark attack sign, a couple of different chairs and beachside artifacts, and of course a large temple showcasing Arlong Park, which has a lot of battle damage and weather to it, which really makes it feel very lived in. This set is very much play focused rather than display focused, and there's not really that much going on with the interior of the main build. It really is just built for play, but honestly, that function is so much fun that I think it's worth it. The set does come with a selection of minifigures from that scene. Of course, leading the charge is Arlong as well as his Lieutenant Chu. You've also got Nami, who's very crucial for the scene with a special variant made for the set. Same with Usopp, who also has a unique outfit, and of course, Luffy, who's featured in the only set that actually includes him with his rubbery, stretchy arms, which is really cool to see LEGO is still making that piece. Overall, I think the thing I like most about this set is it feels the most like a classic LEGO playset, like the kind of thing that I would have loved from my childhood, where you have a few different side builds to play around with, a big major play function for the main building, and just a setting for your heroes and villains to do battle in, which to me makes pretty much the quintessential LEGO Final Battle playset. And for $80, it thankfully isn't too overpriced, so it is in the realm of reasonability for kids to pick it up. Moving onwards, let's take a look at each of the individual components of the set. The set includes a few randomized wanted posters, the main collectible of the wave, and one of the smaller side builds is this shooting gallery, which actually is a really nicely working function. It's super simple, you just have a stud shooter cannon which you can use to knock over the targets, but it is a very effective one, and it is pretty satisfying to have to use this cannon to blast over the targets themselves, where you can see you kind of have to have it lined up and fire right there. The other side build is much less interesting. You have a fallen tree, a juice bottle, as well as just a little tiny tree growing in its place. Honestly, this is one of my least favorite parts of the set because I just feel like it doesn't really add anything to the build and feels more of just an excuse to use up the parts budget. I guess it kinda resembles the terrain around the park, but I kinda wish these pieces were used to just better effect. The same can sort of be said for this small build here, although I do like a couple of aspects of it. First of all, they introduced a brand new snail piece for this theme, which obviously is meant to reflect the snail telephones, but you can also use just as a regular snail in your sets. You have a small counter with drinks, as well as a table and a nice little kind of awning area to sit down on. Really, there's not that much going on to this particular part of the build, and there's really no sort of play function, but I think it's alright for what it is. Moving onwards, we have Arlong's throne here, which says Shark Attack. Love that sticker, and it is really cool to get these flames surrounding the throne as well. I actually do quite like this side build. I feel like it is very unique. You have the multicolored candles for the different colors of the bars making up the awning here, and altogether, I also like the graphic design of the Shark Attack sign. You literally have the classic LEGO shark being depicted there, which I think is super cool. Moving onwards though, I think the main part of the build that everyone wants to see is the temple, Arlong Park itself, and this is a really well done structure. Thankfully, despite the wanted posters being randomized, I did receive an Arlong tile in this set, so obviously I had to put it on, and showcasing the rest of the build here, you can see that they actually very cleverly disguise the play function by actually making it look like the temple is kind of ramshackle and broken down. Little bits and pieces of the roofing are breaking apart. You have little pieces of the awnings which are literally broken down and laying on the ground in front of the temple, and all of that helps to disguise the fact that this entire thing is made to break. And that is super cool. You have the chains, which Arlong used to confine Nami, which is a pretty dark but nice touch here. You've got some scrolls in the boxes there, and altogether the rest of the temple is completely empty. There is literally nothing to do, but honestly, that doesn't bother me as much as it does for some other LEGO buildings, because if you look at its depiction in the show, there's also literally nothing to do in the interior other than what you see here, which is the chain area as well as some maps just all around the first floor of the building, because of course Arlong's plan was to have Nami draw some maps for him, so you do have the maps on the sides of the walls as stickers. Other than that though, you don't really see much of the interior in the show, certainly not the other levels, so I think it's totally okay that the LEGO set also chooses to just forgo that and instead focus on making it a really fun toy to play with. So exactly how does this work? Well, everything is held together by a really clever function. The way it works is you have Luffy kind of punch down the top cone, and with the top cone down, you can then just press down, apply force downwards, and the entire temple will split apart. It's a remarkably clever system that's a lot more complex than you may realize. There's actually a lot of different mechanized components going on to make it explode in the right way, and that's one of my favorite parts about the set. It would have been really easy to just have the temple be easy to break apart and have it come built in certain sections, but there was a lot of intentionality to just how it explodes, the way it's actually exploding outwards and not just crumbling down, and I really appreciate that. So how does this work? Well, you have the two bottom sides of the temple, which are mounted on very loose hinges, so those splay open. You've got the two halves of the front of the temple here, which attach via a clip, and then you have the top of the temple, which, if you actually apply pressure downwards with the cone removed, actually makes it forcibly split apart. It's a very clever design, and taking a look from the back, you can see just how they pulled this off, because you have a little bit of extra force when you have the clip of the middle section kind of separate off, so you have a bit of extra force splitting it apart in the middle. And then, the way that this section works is with the cone removed downwards, it forces it to push these pieces out, so you can see it actually splays them outwards when you apply pressure down. It's a very clever feature, and you can see it literally wedges the temple itself apart to make it look like a very satisfying explosion. I have seen a lot of LEGO sets that are made to be destroyed. There are so many play features for LEGO sets that are literally made for you to destroy what you're building. But this is the only time I've seen a LEGO set be built fairly solidly. Obviously, if you really rigorously shake it around, it'll topple over, but it is fairly solid as a build, and there actually is a lot more involved mechanisms going on to actually make it explode in a way that is visually cool and interesting. And I absolutely have to commend the set for that. It's one of my favorite details about the set, and it made this set, which honestly wasn't that high on my wanted list when I saw it first, become one of my favorite sets to play with this entire year. It's super easy to reset. It's not annoying like some of the other brick-built LEGO things that once you kind of blow them up, you never really want to do it again because they're annoying to put back together. This literally takes a few seconds to put back together and it's ready to go again for another explosion. It just is so much fun to play with, and you can see while filming my review, I literally was just having a ton of fun exploding it over and over and over again. Altogether, with the exploding feature and the way it all works, this easily became one of my favorite LEGO One Piece sets of the entire wave, and I'm personally very happy with it, both value and play-wise. Now, let's take a look at the minifigures themselves, because this comes with a ton of exclusive characters, fully decked out in really nice prints as well. Of course, we have to start off with Arlong here, who is the main villain of One Piece Season 1. He has a printed tattoo on his arm and a specially molded headpiece, which showcases his hair, his hat, and his purple fin sticking out of the back. One of my big points about the figure is that I really was hoping LEGO would actually mold his nose. He has a very distinctive sawtooth saber-toothed shark head mold, which in the show really protrudes outwards from his face, so I was really hoping that we would get a special molded minifigure head element similar to Pinocchio from the Disney CMF, but honestly, after having the minifig in hand, I don't necessarily mind the fact that he just uses a standard headpiece, especially because the rest of the figure is so specialized with a really nice rubberized hat and hair combo. The torso, of course, is exclusive and made just for the character, and I really love the detail of the fins sticking out of his back, which I feel like adds a lot to the character of the figure itself. Moving on to his Lieutenant Chu here, Chu is a fishman, and you can see that depicted in the facial expression, but honestly, this is not one of the more interesting characters. It is really nice to showcase the actual tattoo printed on all of the arms of the fishermen themselves. I think that is a really nice touch, which is very plot relevant, but otherwise, it's a pretty standard figure. Utilizing Nova's hairpiece from LEGO Friends, a nice dual-sided headpiece there which showcases the very distinctive lips that both the anime version and the live-action version have, and then a more simple torso with just a blue striped tank top and a shark tooth necklace around the neck. Moving onwards, we have the rubberized version of Luffy, who is exclusive to this set. He's utilizing either the same or a very similar mold that we saw for Miss Marvel, Elastigirl, and some of the other characters that use these very long and stretchy rubbery abilities. Fingers crossed we're going to get a Mr. Fantastic minifigure at some point with this design, and overall, I think it's a really nicely done figure. Obviously, this isn't the version they would want to include in every set, but if there was one set to include the super stretchy Luffy in, well, it was this one, because it's the one where he uses his final attack to destroy the temple itself. The way these rubbery arms work, if you're not familiar, is that you basically have these plastic components for the arms themselves, and then you can choose to pull them in one direction or the other to really have the arm be kind of stretching outwards, which I think is just such a fun design. Of course, he is sporting dual molded legs, which are the same dual molded legs he uses for his other minifigures, but altogether, I think this is a really cool minifigure. It is so much fun to play with those rubbery limbs, and I'm hoping LEGO will do more figures like this, because this is a ton of fun. He doesn't have the straw hat on his head this time because, of course, he has given it to Nami, but the straw hat does appear in this set as its own standalone piece, which is attached to the back of Nami's back, which you can see right here. I really love how they made two different versions of the straw hat for the one-piece sets, one with hair attached to it in a dual mold, and one is a standalone hat that can be held by a clip. You can see the part where Nami has cut out her own tattoo, which is a pretty grisly detail for a LEGO set to have, but it's really cool they depicted that on a minifigure because I feel like that is a super important part of her character. It's when she really fully truly joined the team, and it's a really nice print to get with the bandage on the side of the arm. Of course, you have two different expressions used for the figure, and this has been made exclusively for this set. One side is crying, depicting her character in that moment with that seed, and of course the other side is happy, and she does have a unique outfit for this set as well. It really goes to show that LEGO spared no expense whatsoever when depicting the minifigures here, where the amount of detail is just absolutely phenomenal. It's really blown me away just how good all the figures look and just how much detail goes into every single one of them. So overall, very happy with this one, especially with that new molded hairpiece as well. Moving on to the final figure of the set, we get Usopp here as well, and Usopp does have an exclusive torso print, which is really nice. Dual molded arms with printing on the side of the arm too, showcasing kind of that striped detail he has on the arm, which is super nice. You have a brand new dual molded hat and hair combo there with the dark green bandana with the dark brown hair underneath, and overall, I think this is a really good way to depict him. You have his bag, which kind of goes along the side. I think that this shirt piece can also just be used in general for just a ton of tropical themed LEGO characters, and I like how they actually didn't print a skin tone on the torso itself, so you can choose to use that for all sorts of different figures. You don't have to keep it exclusive to just this one character. It's a bit more ubiquitous in its design, which I really like. Overall, this is easily one of the best sets of the One Piece wave. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I also think it's still only like the third best set of the wave, which really goes to show just how good the entire LEGO One Piece lineup of sets is. Talking about the value here, this is only $80 US, which is actually really good for 926 pieces. I really do feel like I am getting good value for money with this set, which is not something I can say about most other LEGO sets that came out this year. So I have very little complaints. It is good value, great minifigures, minifigures. Every single one of the minifigures in this set is exclusive, which is phenomenal. I'm shocked they have 5 exclusive minifigures in the set like this. That's only $80 for 926 pieces. LEGO, please give us more value like this in the future, because this is really nicely done. Overall, that about sums up my thoughts on the battle at Arlong Park. Super fun play feature, really great final battle design, and one of those playsets that really does feel like you're harkening back to the classic days of LEGO, where you just have sets that are simply super fun to play with. That's all for this review, so now let's go ahead and move on to the next set. And now for the moment you all have been waiting for. Yes, this is 75639, the Going Merry pirate ship. It retails for $140 US or 130 euros and comes with 1,376 pieces. It also includes the entire crew of the Going Merry, at least so far at this point in the series. You've got Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji, and I think it is really cool to actually get all 5 major characters depicted in this one set. It would have been really easy for LEGO to include only some but not all of the crew, maybe include a villain instead, but I really do like that they clearly know what fans want. If I'm buying the Going Merry, I want every single figure that makes sense to be included in the set, and that is something I really appreciate. Also, because this set only includes 5 figures for $140, they were able to use the budget to really make the ship feel more beefed up and feel better as a design with a lot of phenomenal detail. There are no pre-molded elements used for the hull of the boat, which LEGO has done before in the past. Every single aspect of this build is fully brick built, and that is for better or for worse. Now, I know a lot of fans when they first saw the set were a little disappointed with the size of the boat. If you compare the size to something like, say, the Ninjago Destiny's Bounty, which retails at a similar price but just has so much more scale to it, I can totally understand why people were maybe a bit disappointed that this is kind of a scaled down version of the boat, but as a LEGO playset, I actually do think that this is pretty much the perfect size to play with. There's a couple of things about the set that I feel like could have been improved, namely with the sails themselves, but almost everything about it is genuinely really well done. The sheep head design for Mary on the front of the boat is really well built, and overall I just love the amount of detail factored into the set despite it coming in at a slightly smaller overall scale than what you would expect a minifigure scale Going Merry to look like, which probably should have been like double the size of the set, but also twice as expensive. On the back here you have a rudder which is attached via a mixel joint, and that's the only kind of strange part of the set to me. It is a little bit weird to have this just be able to bend all the way around, and I feel like just having a simple clip connection to go back and forth would have been a little bit better. Other than that though, I really do love these studs in the side detail on the back and hull shaping of the ship itself, which I think goes to show just how well designed this build is. Overall, you can see that there is a front part of the deck here, and this is what the ship looks like when fully assembled, but of course this does have a little bit of an interior as well, which we're about to take a look at in a second. Because despite the smaller size compared to some other LEGO pirate ships, this does have a really fully detailed interior, at least the best they could. Moving onwards to the front here, you can see a hatch can be removed for the front compartment. There's another hatch which can be removed in the center, showcasing some of the cargo the ship is carrying and holding all of the randomized wanted posters included in the set, which is the main chase collectible of the One Piece wave. You can slide out a back room for the section here, and then finally, the entire back part of the ship can be fully removed to allow access to the back deck. So there's actually quite a lot going on when it comes to the interior of this vessel. I'm going to start off by showcasing the front of the ship, which has a nice couch or bed for the characters to use. It's a much more scaled down version of stuff that we've seen in the show, but I really do like it for what it is. Of course, you do have some windows on the side as well, which you can use to peek out, and some rope being used as well to just showcase the different aspects of things you can do on the ship. There's a telescope which is mounted on a clip, as well as a goblet in which you can use for just various purposes, and then we can now move on to the next compartment. The middle compartment of the ship is pretty much just cargo, and honestly, I would have expected to see something a little more involved than this, but I think it's alright, especially given that you can't really fit minifigures in the base of the ship. Here you have a selection of randomized wanted posters, and these are just randomly distributed throughout all the sets. You never know which ones you are going to get, and these are the 4 I got in my set, although of course your experiences will drastically vary. Despite having all the sets, I am still missing the Buggy the Clown wanted poster after all. Moving on from that, we we can take a look at the main interior area of the ship, and this is really where the ship gets to shine when it comes to the interior design. You've got a little bit of a chef's area for cooking, so you have pots, pans, and plates there, some nice stickers adorning the wall there, and even salt and pepper, because of course you do have Sanji on board after all, a pizza being cut up, a sink, and a nice little multicolored sofa for the characters to sit on and enjoy their food. This is really the part of the Going Merry that makes the ship feel like a home. It is really a nice amount of detail packed into such a small space, and that's something I really appreciate about the build, is just how much they were able to pull off using the relatively smaller confines of the ship itself. Of course, this door here can open up and there are stairs leading upwards to the main deck, and then you can go on the side and go up the stairs here to actually go up to the second level, which also has its own design. Placing this back onwards, this really just attaches by a couple of studs, and it uses a pretty clever method of adhering to the ship by kind of just rotating and sliding inwards, which just feels very satisfying to click it in. And then of course, you can take the back of the ship here. You've got some hints towards Nami's origin with the tangerines growing on the back of the ship. And then of course, you open this up to showcase just a few more accessories that you can find on the inside. Buckets, a spoon, a telescope, some potions or bottles and vials. This just all helps to make the ship feel like it's lived in and has a storage compartment of its own, or maybe the crew members are storing some of the most valuable treasure they found on their journeys. Moving onwards with the rest of the ship, once the interior has been fully placed back in place, I want to call out the material used for the sails of the vessel, because that was actually a point of contention when this first was released. A lot of people were wondering, well, why didn't they use regular fabric for the sails? Because it definitely does look a lot better when you have fabric versus vinyl. Well, the thing is, the vinyl being used here is a little bit different than your standard kind of shiny Lego vinyl pieces. It looks a little better, and the benefit to this, which they've used this material a couple times before, like in the 4+ Destiny's Bounty for Ninjago Legacy, is that you have the print extenuating onto both sides of the sail. So you can literally see it from the front and the back, and that was super crucial for the back sail being striped with red and tan. It is really important to showcase that from both sides. One of my only aesthetic complaints about the ship is the usage of these rubberized pieces for the sides of the mast. They just feel a little bit awkward to me, and it is really hard to get these fully aligned. Like, they're mounted on handlebars, so if you have them pushed all the way in, it looks a little bit too narrow, and then of course if you move them all the way out, they feel like there's just too much slack, so I kind of wish they used any other piece. I do miss the days of having you kind of actual thread real string in and out of the masts, but for a building toy that is designed for kids to play with as well, it definitely works okay. Altogether, I do think this is a really great LEGO representation of the Going Merry. It would be cool to maybe one day get an even bigger version of this, like a UCS style version that has like a 1-to-1 minifig scale that's a lot larger, but for what it is, I do like it. And now we can move on to the minifigs. Of course, we have to start off with Monkey D. Luffy here, and Luffy has a really nice set of dual molded legs, dark blue and that kind of nougaty color for the legs themselves, plain nougat arms, and the dark red torso, and he has two different expressions as well, one that is just simply smiling, and then one that shows him really like happy or laughing or shouting for joy, which I think is pretty perfect for the character. He does have a dual molded hair hat combo, and it is really cool to get that new for One Piece, while the hat itself is just a nice design. Zoro here has a specialized outfit for this set, which is a really nice one to get. It is tan with dual molded arms, so tan and nougat for the arms. You have plain black pants, but honestly I don't really think it needed any extra detail. And of course, much like the other Zoro minifigures, he does come with the sword he holds in his mouth, which is a really nice new design. It just clips right onto the minifigure. I think it works super well for the minifigure design, and you do have the option to swap out the hair with the bandana there, so you have the green hair recolored, or you can use the bandana itself, which is a really nice touch. Overall, I really do appreciate the amount of detail that goes into minifigures like this one, because it shows that LEGO cares so much about depicting the versions of the character that you can see on screen. You can choose to show him with the hair, with the sword in his mouth, or without, and with the bandana on. And of course, the alternate expression is a smile versus having the teeth clenched as if he's actually holding the sword in his hands. You can literally hold the sword in his hands as well, but obviously you do have the neck bracket sticking out of it, so I think this piece just looks a lot better when it's held in the mouth. Moving on from that, we can take a look at Nami here. And Nami is the same design that we got for some of the smaller sets of the wave, but it is still a really nicely designed figure. She has an exclusive new hairpiece which is made specifically for her character. I don't really know if they're going to use that one outside of this one minifigure because it is fairly specialized, but I can see them trying to bring it in different colors for other characters. And the only complaint I have here is that while it does have dual molded arms, which is really nice, I think it would have been even more perfect with dual molded legs, showcasing her shorter skirt and then showing the sandals that she's wearing throughout the first season. So that's my only thing about the minifigure, but otherwise I do think it is a really nice design. Moving onwards, we have Sanji here. He does also have a brand new hairpiece used for the character. It would have been really easy for LEGO to use one of the pre-existing hairpieces they have, which are very close, but not the same as this hairpiece, but they really went all out to depict him with a specialized new hairpiece. He has a really nice new torso showcasing a black double-button suit, double-breasted suit there. He's got a nice new facial expression as well, showing a smirk and a smile, and I think it just fits for the character. Usopp also has a new design for the set, with printing on the side of the arm, super cool to get that. His satchel, which is always present, a dual molded hat and hair combo element, which is really nice, and of course, fully printed torso and legs, which is just really well done. Altogether, I have nothing but nice things to say about the minifigures of not just this set, but the entire One Piece series. I feel like LEGO really went all out to depict these, so I, for one, am a big fan of just how much detail has been factored in. But with that, we can sum up my look at the One Piece Going Merry pirate ship. This to me is the quintessential One Piece set, and I can easily see this becoming the most popular LEGO One Piece set. People have been asking for a One Piece Going Merry for years, and we finally are getting One Piece LEGO, and this is the quintessential set to get. I know that when it was first revealed, folks were really hoping that it would be a little bit larger, that it'd have a bit more of an interior, but for $140, not being the biggest set of the wave, I actually think that this is pretty perfect. I was skeptical when I first heard the price and I was hoping it would be a lot larger, but I also think it's important to have this be at least a relatively accessible to kids and not just have it be a gigantic 18+ model, which obviously we are getting for this wave, but for the main actual build of this set, I think it's important to have something like this, which kids can enjoy as well. And so, that about sums up my review of 75639, the Going Merry pirate ship. Pretty happy with this one, but of course, let me know in the comments what you think about the set. And now, let's move on to the next set. Here it is, folks, the largest LEGO One Piece set from this entire wave, 75640, the Baratie Floating Restaurant. It retails for $330, 300 euros, and comes with 3,402 pieces. And this is awesome. I absolutely love this set so much, and I was actually quite skeptical when it was first revealed. When I heard we were getting a massive 18+ Baratie, I imagined that it would be fully enclosed and actually serve as a sailable ship. But the more I think about it, the more I enjoy the set, and the more I actually have it on display, I've come to really appreciate the fact that every single piece has been used in service of making this look big, look impressive, but also have a beautiful interior, which we're going to be taking a look at in a second. There is so much to say about this set, so where do we even begin? Well, I figure we have to start off by taking a look at just the exterior of the set itself. The Baratie, of course, is a floating restaurant and a floating ship with a very distinctive fish mouth on the front of the boat itself, which is a really nice dining area. You have some dock elements that can be attached to the front and side of the ship itself, and even a smaller side build for a boat which Mihawk can use to actually approach the ship itself. I think one of my favorite parts about this model is how lifelike and vibrant it is. You have the bright red, the brown, the gold, the color scheme just looks absolutely phenomenal. A splash of teal and sand green really just to bring in that kind of marine feel to it. And overall, it is just a really nicely detailed build. I think that this is absolutely one of my favorite sets this entire year, just for the sheer amount of detail it's managed to pack in while still being a fully playable set as well. Again, despite this being an 18+ LEGO item, this certainly is not just for display. In fact, there are so many fun play features, and we're going to take a look at the first one here by starting with the front dock, where you can dock into the Baratie on this front area here. There is a gear that's hidden away kind of in this blue color to make it look like waves, and it's a super simple function. It just allows you to rotate the two figures here, kind of mimicking the duel between Zoro and Mihawk, but I think it is done really nicely. It's a very simple construction construction, but one that adds a lot of life to the scene. And I really like how they managed to factor that into the set here to really also kind of make it a minifigure showcase set piece in the very front of the restaurant too. The dock itself can be removed via a couple of axles on the set, and it's actually the last thing that you build in the set, which is pretty interesting, but obviously you would just need to keep it on there to fully have the look of the set be complete. There's also a side build of a little boat here, which Mihawk uses to sail into the vessel, and this is the only part of the set that is a little bit lackluster to me. I don't know, I mean, I guess it kind of does look like what it looks like in the show, but it has a very weird construction. It almost doesn't really look like a boat to me. It's using these hinge elements which kind of make it look very boxy and angular in its design, and I definitely feel like this could have used a few more iterations to be fully detailed and accurate, but honestly, given that it is just a small side build, I don't really mind it that much. Of course, there is a smaller side build for the boat to dock into the Baratie through the chef's entrance, and of course, now we can dock into the larger dock on the front of the Baratie itself, where you can see the front entrance, which is really nicely built. You have a sticker being used on the transparent shield element there for the window, a really nice sand green and gold display, and of course, one of my favorite things about the set is that it still looks good when turned at an angle. You have the large fish head, which is very prominent in the front of the boat, utilizing gold macaroni elements, which is so clever in its design. You've got some fish statues over here, which I think look really good, and of course, a full upper deck area for all the different characters to hang out and enjoy the restaurant. You also have some great studs in the side building techniques used for the red stripe all around the edge of the boat, which look especially good near the front, where you have these little curves and dips and all these different angular elements to really just add a lot of life and color to the build, and that's just one of my favorite elements of how this was done. I also like how the sand green just around the windows is used very sparingly. It's almost like there's only sand green used for the set when you have an entrance into the restaurant, like the door or some of the windows themselves, and everything else is just kind of wood, red, and gold. Up on the top deck here, you have some seating for the figures, and removing all the minifigures, you can take a better look at what the set looks like all by itself. I really do like how it has like multiple different layers of a ship here, so you have like this upper deck which has some flowers, some chairs, then you go up to the very top which has kind of a miniaturized version of the ship with the captain's quarters and a bit of a lighthouse area on the top with a nice build for the top of the ship with wings. You've got the use of these horn and claw elements to really make it look like there's a very impressive centerpiece. But now I think it's time to actually go ahead and explore Baratie for itself and see what this amazing restaurant has to offer. And oh my goodness, I'm getting hungry because this is making me feel hungry for some good food. It's been a while since we've reviewed a full-on restaurant-based LEGO set, so let's dive in to everything the interior has to offer. So, slowly rotating this around, you can see that this is just a facade, and that is absolutely a fair complaint about the set. For $330, I know a lot of folks are wondering if we would have it be fully enclosed, but I feel like a lot of the interior just wouldn't have been present if they did that, and I'm glad they actually maximized the amount of budget and parts for this set to really make the interior feel super special. Now, going into the main build, obviously you have this super cool spiral staircase design, but I actually do want to start off in the mouth of the fish here. You've got these curved benches, which is accurate to its appearance in the show. You have the curved bar there as well, which showcases some drinks being served, and there is a nice wanted poster that you can use to kind of showcase some of the different characters in the set. And the set does come with quite a lot of these wanted posters to just hang out all around the restaurant. Overall, this is one of my favorite parts of the build. The ship face is really nicely done. It's using a lot of angles, studs on the sides, studs on angles themselves, and it's just a really impressive build. Moving on to the chef's area here, you can open up the door to take a look at the kitchen and honestly, let them cook, because this is a really nicely detailed kitchen. You have kind of a diagonal black tile stripe element being used to just showcase the different tiles on the floor, and all sorts of different seafood related elements are being cooked here, like the crab, the fish, you've got a whisk mounted to the wall, all sorts of different pots and pans, an egg, a bowl, a pan there, a stove, pretty much everything you would want in a kitchen is factored in here. Now, another of my favorite details are these little seats here. They're curved seats, but they actually do manage to fit up to 4 minifigures, which is how you're able to actually showcase and replicate that scene from the movie, which showcased how they met Sanji and he was their waiter serving the current 4-member crew of the Going Merry food, and they have them all seated around the table, where clearly they could have just made smaller booths and maybe they could have them only seat 2 or 3 figures, but they made sure to have room for 4 different minifigures to sit around the table, which is really fantastic. Say that again. Moving on to the rest of the tables, you can see that you have a different set of food elements associated with the tables themselves. You've got like a salad here, some drinks, you have a center gold table, which is really nice, and then a sandwich on the other table here, which is just nice detail and adding some diversity to the set. Moving up the spiral staircase, which is also built very nicely, you have a couple of different stickers which reference things you can see inside the restaurant itself, like fine quality dining, Baratie catch the day, a sticker showing the massive squid monster, and of course the first battle of the Cook Pirates depicted as a Lego sticker. Moving onwards to the rest of the interior here, you have some more wanted posters hung up, a map, and of course that brand new snail element they introduced for One Piece to use for the telephones, but also one that you can just use for regular snails as well, which is a really nice new animal piece to get. On the other side here, you have a cupboard showcasing some of the secret ingredients hidden inside, and with that opened up, you can see that it actually has this really nice opalescent element which is fully attached inside of the cabinet itself. I like the design of the chair using the Ninjago Stone Army helmet design, and of course, you have some more seating up here and stairs which allow you to go up to the top deck. Moving on to the rest of the interior here, you do have a very short but sweet little section for the captain's quarters, showcasing a dual molded crystal rock element that they actually used in orange first in the Jurassic Park sets, so that's super cool to see. One of the new Minecraft mini ladders being used here as well, and then of course a sword on display with a couple of other potions and vials just up on the top rack here, which add a bit more character and personality to the set. Moving on to the minifigures, we have the entire One Piece crew, which is very nice, starting off with Luffy here. Luffy has dual molded legs, which look really good for the character. They are pretty much the same legs, all the different versions of him used, but I think it looks good. A dual molded hat and hair combo, and he is the same minifigure that you get in the Going Merry, so you have that very cheery expression, and then a smirk on the other side, which I think just looks really perfect for the character. Also identical to what you get in the Going Merry set is Nami here, and Nami is utilizing her standard appearance with dual molded white and tan arms. One of the things I wish we had were dual molded legs to showcase the shorts she's wearing, but I think the figure looks okay as is, and it is really nice to get a brand new hairpiece for Nami, especially because it is super specialized. It really fits the character well, and of course you do have a couple different expressions too, with a smiling face on one side and an angry face on the other. It's a really good depiction of the character in live action, and of course I am really curious to see if LEGO will use that hairpiece for other figures in the future, because as of right now, it's a really good specialized one. Speaking of specialized hairpieces, we have a version of Sanji here, and this one's actually exclusive to this set. He does come in a specialized outfit showcasing his waiter uniform. As I mentioned, the hairpiece has been made specifically for him, and it looks really good. I think it would have been very easy for LEGO to just use the same hairpiece that they've used on a couple other characters, but no, they made a new one for this figure, and I think that is really special to get. It really does look good for the character, and I like how it kind of covers his eye just ever so slightly, which is a very distinctive part of the figure. He is also very much tied in to the rest of the chef uniforms we see in this set itself, so I think overall it is a really well done figure. Zoro is also included, and he is in his blue suit, which he was seen in the Buggy the Clown set as well. It does have a really nice design, and they actually have the Wado Ichimonji made as a unique LEGO piece to hold in his mouth. It's a really cool element, which you can basically just use to slide around his neck. It slides in and out and just clips in, and allows you to make it look like he's holding the sword in between his teeth. He's sporting dual molded arms, as well as either hair or a bandana, which again shows that LEGO really wanted to spare no expense when coming to depicting different versions of the characters. Whether you want him in one style or another, you can basically depict Zoro in all sorts of different outfits, even in just one set. And I like how every single set that includes Zoro does have the option to either use his hair or bandana. Of course, the new sword element itself can be held in a minifigure's hand too, which is pretty cool, but obviously it's going to be pointing the wrong way in that case, so I definitely would recommend you leave it in his mouth. Moving on from that, we have Usopp here as well. Usopp is using the same outfit that we've seen him come in for one of the other sets as well, so it's not necessarily an exclusive figure, but it is still really nicely done. I love the new hat-hair combo in the coral and dark brown color scheme, and the printing on the side of the arm is just the icing on the cake. That is one thing they really did special for a lot of the LEGO One Piece figures, was really unique printing for the arms, the legs, some dual molding here and there. It really goes to show just how much they cared about depicting these characters right. So I'm personally a fan of how they pulled this off. He also has his iconic green slingshot, which is a new color for the slingshot piece, but one that really nicely ties into the One Piece theme, and of course, a scared expression on the other side, which is very much in character for him. I think my favorite minifigure and the most anticipated one of the set is Mihawk here. Mihawk is sporting a brand new sword element which looks absolutely fantastic. I'm sure a lot of folks are going to absolutely love using this in all their custom figures. It has a really nice dual-sided functionality as well, where you can remove the sword from the hand and basically place it on his neck, which you can see there basically makes it look like he is holding his sword in a sheath on his back, which just looks really good. Of course, he has a golden dagger as well, because he is always wielding at least two blades at once as the greatest swordsman in the land, and I also really like how they really tried to depict all the details of the figure fully accurately, like the golden eyes that he has, which are very distinctive, the cowboy style of hat, and of course, the open chest print on the torso, which despite it being printed on a black LEGO element, really looks to be the right color. Thankfully, they were able to fully nail that design there, and I just imagine they've just improved their printing processes to make that work out a lot better than we've seen in the past, and I love the way they were able to do it. Overall, Mihawk is one of the most specialized minifigures in the set itself, especially thanks to that exclusive sword, and I would love to see him come in other sets that aren't just this big one. Moving on from that, we have arguably the most important character to come in a Baratie set, and that is, of course, Chef Zeph. Zeph here is sporting a brand new color for his hairpiece. It is an ochre yellow or ochre brownish color, which they introduced for LEGO Friends earlier this year. That's only been seen in like one LEGO Friends horse, but it's a really nice new color to get, which I think fully fits the character. It also has a brand new beard element and a new recolor of the Zane hairpiece in this ochre yellow color, which is super cool. It's often pretty rare to have a new LEGO color be represented on a minifigure, but I think that it is the right color to use for the character. So overall, I am a big fan of how they were able to pull this one off, and the minifigure is pretty perfect. I'd love to see that beard on more like Viking themed LEGO minifigures in different colors because it looks super useful. One nice surprise about the set is we do have the main Marines featured as well. This is Vice Admiral Garp, and it does make sense to include him in Baratie because he and his crew did manage to go to the restaurant. It's a fairly simple minifigure, but I do like the gray color of this spiky hairpiece. I think it was already used in the Bricktober minifigure pack for Harry Potter in 2018, but it is still a nice one to get, and of course he does have this nice buttoned up double-breasted Admiral outfit as well, which I think just works very well for the character. Of course, he is accompanied by the two Marines in training, Kobe and Helmeppo, and I think both of them look really perfect for the characters. I honestly was really surprised at just how good they look, and I think that Helmeppo in particular, right here, has the perfect facial expression for kind of that like lame, dopey grin he has. I just don't really know how to describe it, but it is just so perfect for his character, and then just like a sad expression on the back. I just think it just shows like how pathetic he is at this stage, which is really funny. Cadet Kobe is also depicted really nicely. Dual molded arms, the same torso used for both of them, but given that they are both cadets, I think it totally makes sense to include them in this set. And that, again, facial expression is so perfect for the character. I feel like despite these two being basically side characters, they really went all out in depicting their very distinctive visual appearances. And I guess that makes sense because there aren't really any existing LEGO pieces you could use for the heads to work for the customs there, so I get why they did it, but they still do look really good. And so overall, that about sums up my look at the Baratie floating restaurant. $330 for 3,402 pieces and 10 minifigures is really good. And honestly, the more I have managed to play with this, the happier I am that they managed to use every single piece in a way that it counts. You have a beautiful interior, a spiral staircase, the fish mouth, so many tables, inside offices, the kitchens, and the exterior looks phenomenal as well. This to me is one of the best sets of the year. I absolutely can see it appearing on my top 10 best sets of the year list that I make every December, and for good reason. It is genuinely a triumph of a build. I certainly think it is the best One Piece set build-wise that we get all wave, and this is coming from a very, very strong wave of sets, so overall, I love this set. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know in the comments what you think about this one, and of course, I'm really curious to hear if you're planning on picking this up when it releases on August 1st. And with that, we have summed up my thoughts on the entirety of the LEGO One Piece 2025 wave. I have seen people be super excited for these sets online, and I really hope that suggests that LEGO will continue to make One Piece items. Imagine if they actually went on to cover the manga or the anime at some point, especially with the success of this series. I would love to see it, and I definitely am a big fan of how they were able to depict all these different scenes in the sets. The wave is also remarkably comprehensive for the first season of the live-action One Piece. I think literally the only kind of setting and characters that were missed were Kuro and the introduction of Usopp, but given that that was kind of the least well-received part of the live-action, I think that they chose their 5 sets very, very well. The Going Merry was a must, the Baratie is beautiful, it's really cool to get the origins of Luffy, which is one of the most surprising sets of the wave, and the other two, the final battle at Arlong Park and the Buggy the Clown Circus tent, totally makes sense in terms of sets to use as battles with the villains. If I had to rank these sets, I think subject matter wise, the Going Merry is probably my favorite because it's one that a lot of people have been wanting, myself included. Build wise, Baratie though is the best build, but let's say as a whole, my number 1 is Going Merry, a close second is Baratie, 3 is probably Arlong Park for that amazing play feature, 4 is the small set, $30 is great value and it's good to see Luffy's origins be depicted, and then the worst set of the wave for me is Buggy the Clown Circus tent, but it's not even that bad. It's just kind of an average set which feels a little bit overpriced in a wave full of phenomenally priced sets and phenomenal builds, so honestly, I have very, very little to complain about. I am very happy with how all of these are depicted, and I hope you enjoyed this mega review of every single one of the brand new LEGO One Piece sets. Let me know in the comments which ones are you most excited for, which ones are you going to pick up on day 1. Thank you so much for tuning in to Duckbricks, and be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Bye for now.